The expected one has evolved over the course of about 20 years. It started originally as a book about women who had been maligned and misunderstood throughout history. I began my writing journey as a journalist, and I lived and worked in Northern Ireland in the 80s during a very tumultuous period of time. And I realized as I watched very historic and often violent events happen in front of me that the accounts I would read in the papers the next day or watch on television that night had absolutely nothing to do with what I had witnessed before me. It made me very skeptical about recorded history. It made me really wonder if what I'm watching here in front of me is being reported inaccurately on just this microcosm of the streets of Belfast. What does that mean in terms of the big picture? What does that mean to us in terms of the way recorded history exists for 2,000 years? I decided that I really wanted to start looking at history in a different way. I felt an obligation to question history. And I decided that I really wanted to get invested in my work as a folklorist. As an Irish person, I have a real passion for oral traditions. In our culture, so much of what has happened in our history is passed down in families and communities through oral and cultural traditions. And that was my starting point. From there, I decided that if anyone has been lied about in history, it's going to be women. So I wanted to set out to really look at women in history who we remember as villains or as in some way scarlet women or tainted women or somehow notorious, and wanted to see if maybe there was a different version of history behind those women. So I began to write a book which I was calling Maligned and Misunderstood, that incorporated some very famous and notorious women like Lucretia Borgia and Marie Antoinette. And of course, along the way, I realized that Lucretia Borgia never poisoned anyone, and Marie Antoinette never said, "Let them eat cake." And most importantly, I realized that Mary Magdalene was certainly not a prostitute. Not only that, she was likely the apostle of the apostles and very possibly the closest person to Jesus in the world. Further, I began to believe that Jesus may have left his entire mission to Mary Magdalene at one stage. And that is where I began to really focus my work on Mary Magdalene. At this stage, Mary Magdalene really took over my life, and her story and the importance of her story became so important to me that it became my sole focus. And I spent 15 years on 4 continents investigating the truth of Mary's story. And that's how The Expected One came about. More than anything, I hope that this book will inspire people on their own path, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. I hope it will encourage people to go out there and read the thousands of pages of alternate material that exists. There is so much information available to people now in terms of alternate gospels, early church writings, things that go so far beyond the 4 evangelists. I hope that it will inspire people to go out and read those things, to go out and find their own version of what the divine means to them, to go out and find their own version of what the truth may actually be.